Well, hello, friends. This is a special episode of Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken. Yeah, we're going to talk about Star Wars stuff, including some character lore, a bit about costuming, and a whole bunch of other odds and ends as we usually do. However, today we are taking part in Star Wars Podcast Day 2025. On February 7th, 1999, Jedi Talk, the very first Star Wars podcast, got its start, and as they say, the rest is history. Now, each year, bunches and bunches of podcasters get together on this day from all over the world to share their episodes with us. And so I might as well get started by pushing the play on our intro.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
This is Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Todd.
And this is Ken. So, considering that this episode is for Star Wars Podcast Day, Todd, could you do us a favor and let everyone know where they can find this show and all the other shows that you're involved in?
All right. So this show, obviously, wherever you're listening to it now or watching it, is where you can find it first. Otherwise, we are on podcasts on Apple Podcast or Spotify at Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken. We are also on YouTube at Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy. You can find me at Table Ready Podcast. I am on podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can watch me on YouTube. And I'm also playing Dungeons and Dragons with my kids in Lake Clan Legends. And boy, that's getting to be a mouthful.
You probably never would have guessed a year ago that you would be involved with so many different shows.
You know, and to be honest with you, next episode for my podcast is a year. So I'm celebrating a year of doing podcasts, and I never thought that I would be in this.
That's awesome. And so when you say you play Dungeons and Dragons, do you play a single campaign or have you played multiple campaigns with them so far?
So right now we're switching. We do it every weekend. We're on Twitch on Sunday mornings about 11 o'clock. They don't like to get up as early as we want them to. We're supposed to be 10, but it's usually about 11. And what we do is we switch off and on. So one week is my campaign, and my boys are the players. And then one week, Logan, who's the older, he has a campaign. So, and when you search it on YouTube, it's actually separated into two separate campaigns. So you can watch them separately from the beginning to where we are now, or you can just watch them in the order that they came out.
And did they ever fight that dragon?
They have fought a dragon, yes.
Okay.
They've actually met two dragons. One didn't end very well, and actually the other one didn't end very well either. But that's two completely different scenarios. If you want to know the answer to that, you should watch the show.
Nice. Well, when I'm not on this show with you, I'm on Wednesday nights on YouTube. I hang out with Mike Hinton, and we fly around the galaxy on the inflatable Falcon. He's also involved in Karita Cast with his daughter Safi, and his daughter Zoe Hinton has a show called Star Wars Geek Girls. Her and her friend Lizzie from California. I also have another show that I'm involved in called The Rambling Star Wars Fan, and you can find Rambling Star Wars Fan on anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And so one of the things that we often talk about on this show, going back to the idea of or the topic of dragons typically have this mountainous horde of stuff, and we as Star Wars hoarders, Star Wars collectors, love getting more stuff. So have you added anything new to your collection recently?
So I actually got some. I had ordered a while ago, but I actually got some planetary posters that I ordered. And I'm going to make sure that I put this up the right way. I got about a pack of 6 of them. And of course they have.
Those are cool.
Yeah.
Almost like travel posters?
Yeah, they're almost like travel posters. Like Tatooine. So I got those to put up around my room here. But I haven't found a place yet. And also did some work moving pictures around so that we can get better shots and better stuff in the right places because this is my studio now.
You've claimed it and called it so.
Yep, it's the second biggest room in the house, and it's now mine. Speaking of hordes.
That's pretty funny. So
How about you? What did you get?
Well, most folks know, especially if you've ever listened to me on the Inflatable Falcon, know that for 2025, I've decided I'm not going to buy any action figures. And I'm, it's really tough for me. It's this odd itch that needs to be scratched. And so far this year, I've been really, really good. But that doesn't mean that the temptation doesn't still exist. The other night, Heather and I were walking the pup around the neighborhood, and our oldest dude gave us a call, and he actually wanted to talk with me, and which isn't a common thing, but he wanted to talk to me. He said, "Hey, I'm over here at FYE, and they've got a sale on Star Wars action figures." And he turns the camera around, and he's showing me all the figures that are on the pegs, and tell me it's a buy one get one 50% off. And some of you may be impressed to know I didn't have him get any of them.
None of them.
None of them. Not a. Even though there were some that I didn't have, I resisted the temptation, and I just thought it was super cool that this kid knows me so well that he calls me on calls us on a random night just to show me the stuff that's out there. However, even though I said I'm not getting any new Star Wars action figures, I did pick up a slightly used coloring book.
Oh, is that the coloring book? Very nice.
This is called The Art of Coloring. It came out in 2016, and it just has some really fun images in it. I mean, there's one here of Jango Fett. You got a battle droid, and one of my other favorite characters,
Jar Jar,
Jar Jar
nice.
Binks and Chewbacca.
Very cool.
So it's really, for a used book, there was no pages colored. There was a couple like crinkles and creases in it or whatever, but it was a couple bucks. So that kind of helped fill that, scratch that itch of getting things. And I picked up a couple other books about Star Wars politics. And then a third book, the way I described it to Mike the other night is it's a collection of essays, almost like theses, like they could be college essays, various topics related to Star Wars. And if you haven't picked up on it already, I'm quite the nerd, even to the point where I'm paying for people's essays that are about Star Wars. So those are the things that I've added.
I get that. I actually have 2 Star Wars coloring books in my collection.
Oh, really?
I have a big art one like that. That's actually a hardbacked one. It's got hard covers.
Okay.
And then I bought one a couple years back that was all Rogue One. It's all Rogue from the Rogue One movie. So, and there's a lot of good pictures in there. There's a lot of stormtroopers in there, which is kind of hard to color, but
yeah. I saw a meme once, and it was a coloring page of 2 First Order stormtroopers and Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren was all in black, and he was holding his lightsaber, and someone just colored the lightsaber red. So looks like I'm done.
Job's done.
Yeah, job's done. And it's funny that you say you have other Star Wars coloring books, because I also have. Sometimes when I go out to either thrift stores or yard sales, I pick up things like this. I mean, this was from, geez Louise, this has to be 1983 or something. I mean, look at the pages. They're yellow and brown.
Oh, really?
This one actually at one point belonged to Tony.
Oh, it was Tony's book. Nice.
It was Tony's book, and some of the pages are already colored.
Nice.
But like, I don't know why. I'm fascinated by Star Wars stuff, and it doesn't matter what form or shape it is in. And I bought this over the summer, so it doesn't count as 2025 purchases. Just to put that out there as a disclaimer. But it's it's now part of my collection. So thank you, Tony, for allowing me to have your stuff.
Right? Maybe someday Tony be listening and be like, I want my book back.
Yeah. Whoever ended up with that thing? And so
That's
those are,
hilarious.
talking about the additions to the collections. Have you done anything Star Wars related since we got together last?
Not really. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks. I do have some miniatures to paint, but I haven't really had time to work on them. I did a lot of research for this episode in particular. Um, I we'll just leave it at that for right now. I did a lot of research for this, and I learned a lot of things that I probably haven't known in a long time, if I knew at all. So,
Well, I was lucky enough to get up to Pennsylvania. They had a gathering of the Mid-Atlantic Droid Builders. And we've talked about the 501st on here. We're members of the Mando Mercs, the costuming clubs. These
right.
are folks that get together and build droids. And I got to tell you that as a group, I think they take prop making, prop building to a whole new level. The things that they were doing are way, way, way beyond my abilities. I mean, one of the guys was attempting to explain to me how he made a computer board with chips and resistors and soldered pieces, and that was connected to little motors which were connected to little gears that moved this legit robot around. I have trouble putting together, wooden dowels and PVC pipe to make a pole sword. And these guys and girls are making robots that move, and some of them, their lips move that are connected to sounds. It's wild to witness.
Yeah. I'm sure about that. This stuff is crazy. I mean, once you get to the point of circuit boards, it's just magic to me. I don't know. I can do the resistors and the wiring and stuff like that, and motors, and but you mentioned in the last episode that we had that you were going to the droid welders, and of course, one of the things that I did do, and I do a lot, is I think about things that I could do, and maybe should or shouldn't do, but in typical me style, I'm like, well, how could I get involved in the droid builders? And of course, I was thinking about stuff that I could buy or build or whatever. And of course, all that I really came to mind was getting a mouse droid, an MSE droid, just because I think they're fun. I think just watching them zip around the floors and stuff like that, and I think everybody there's a little mystique to them because they're so small, and that would probably be my entry point into droid building.
Well, thankfully for me, you don't have to make anything that moves. You don't have to make anything that has sounds. I mean, my entrance into this group is a 3D printed pit droid
Nice.
named N3RD. Um, and they were they were just as welcoming to me as the person who was working on the motors and rotors for a full size R2 unit. They were it was just incredible to see how willing they were to help me make sure that my nuts and bolts were the proper size to put in the elbow joints of this plastic pit droid, as they were to help someone zip tie wires inside the arm of a C3PO, a protocol droid
Oh
unit,
my
so it
god.
doesn't get caught on the motors and the other gears and stuff like that. I mean, it was so much fun. And the mouse droid, from what I learned, because they had a couple up there, is they have kits that you can get, either 3D printed kits or vacuum formed kits, that you
Okay.
can put an RC car, a radio controlled car, inside of. So you don't have to do the wiring of the motor and the engine or whatever for the MSE droid. You just have to put together the shell and the chassis and the motor and the battery from that RC car. Even the controller is perfectly acceptable,
Oh, very nice.
you know. And they're actually bigger than I thought they would be. The one that they were working on up there was probably maybe from end to end 18 to
Wow.
24 inches long.
That is pretty big. I didn't realize they were that
because
large.
it's big enough to cover the entire. You take the the body off the RC car,
Okay.
and you just have the chassis, the wheels, the engine, and the battery pack, and it just rests right in the frame of the mouse droid, the MSE droid,
Wow.
and it goes just as fast as the radio control car. So
Right.
like you said, these things can legitimately zip around.
I don't know. I always think there's like some coolness whenever you see a mouse droid, and even in the shows, like it comes zipping around the corner, and like when Chewbacca roars at it, and it just and runs
Yep.
away. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of the coolest things. I think that's the one that I would want to build.
Well, and the other thing that I found really cool about this particular group of costumers or prop makers, however you want to describe them, they don't stick to they don't have the rigid requirements of a costuming club. So my pit droid next to their pit droid and the other pit droid and the other pit droid, they don't have the same paint scheme. They don't even have all the same like my version of it was a different print file that somebody else used, and even the lens on the eye, I used a puck light, one of those little push lights,
Oh,
a
okay.
little LED thing. So I used that. Somebody else used different color films and lenses, and then somebody else used a submersible light that you could put into your pool, and they stuck it on the nose behind other filters. So
Oh, that's really cool.
it's not as I guess the phrase I'm going to say is rigid. And I don't mean that to sound negative, but it's not as restrictive or as rigid as costuming clubs.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
I would think not, because everything in Star Wars is kind of a little dusty and dirty and
Yeah.
and lived in,
Yes.
So you would replace that lens with whatever you had available, especially
Yep.
like on Tatooine or some of the more junker planets, But even like if you lived in the fanciest of Corellia and you had a pit droid, and you'd probably have the fanciest lens on there.
Yep.
I could absolutely see that. And, I mean, I guess that is like just the best part of it.
Yeah. It was a good time. And so I'll let you know when they have another one. I think they called it just a build party.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think where in Pennsylvania it was, but it wasn't far from me. It might have been roughly an hour and a half, and I'm coming north from southern New Jersey.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it
you
was
probably come from the other direction.
right. It was north of Philly, so it was probably about 45 minutes to an hour for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's like meeting in the middle.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it was really fun.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we've said it out loud yet, but tonight's episode, yes, it's part of Star Wars Podcast Day. But the topic, the main meat and potatoes of tonight's episode, is an 11-minute cartoon that was tucked into the 1978 holiday special. Yes, I'm talking about the story of the Faithful Wookie. And this is the only portion of that holiday special that you can watch today on Disney Plus. In fact, you can watch I think they've cleaned it up and made it HD quality. And so you had mentioned to me before the show that you'd watched it a couple times. What'd you think about it when you saw it?
So I really didn't remember it. So I was going in with pretty much a fresh mind, fresh eyes, and I thought it was good. Like I mean, obviously the animation is very late 70s, early 80s.
Like psychedelic kind of stuff.
All the colors were oversaturated. All the, like we said before we even started recording, like the some of the cells from one to the next, the colors weren't exactly the same. And I watched all the GI Joes and Transformers and stuff like that, and every once in a while somebody's arm would be a different color, or they forgot to color something in. I mean, the quality was actually a little better than that, but sometimes the colors didn't match. And through my painting eye brain, that kind of always stands out to me. But the story itself was actually a really good 11-minute story. I mean, they had to go save their friend. Luke had to go save his friend. He met this guy that said he was a friend and was going to help him out. I mean, and then they found out at the end that, you know, he was tricking them the whole time. And the story had just enough of a grab. I mean, as a long-lived Star Wars fan, I already knew that Boba Fett was not a good guy. But but if you didn't know that, I mean, if I tried to put myself into the mindset of 1978, and of course I was like 4 at the time, so it was a little difficult. But to go into that mindset, like, this guy just shows up to help them, or just happens to be there. And how many times have we seen that in shows in that era, where they go to this place and there's this helpful character that helps them to go get the next thing that they need to solve their problem? I mean, all the cartoons were like that, all the story-driven cartoons. So it was definitely an interesting experience, and I had to sit and watch it again. And then I actually found the holiday special on YouTube. So I went through and watched the whole holiday special, just because I really don't remember it. So I'm like, and to be honest, it's like everything else. Like this was a time when there might not have been another movie. There may not have been anything past the original movie. And to bring this holiday special with all these guests and stuff like that, it was incredible. I mean, I always feel like when it comes to Star Wars, more is better. I lived through the dark times when there wasn't anything else. So I don't know that I would watch it today. The quality's a little, but to go back and kind of almost relive it, I found it was great. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Especially, you know, going back to this idea of it was made at a certain time. So the holiday special, you know, aired in 1978. It was near the end of disco and near the end of variety shows.
Correct.
You know, I'm talking about things like Donnie and Marie, or Sonny and Cher, or Hee Haw,
Oh yeah.
or even the Muppet Show. You know, if you really think about the Muppet Show as a piece of entertainment, that was a variety show. They'd have little comedic bits. They would have music interludes. They would have parts with humans and parts with puppets, and sometimes it'd be puppets with humans or Muppets with humans.
Right.
So, considering the time it was made, it does make sense. You know, it fit into that genre, it fit into that time. However, it was not universally liked, and still to this day is not necessarily universally liked. And I adore it. I mean, I watch it on purpose at least twice a year. Well, let me rephrase that. I watch parts of it on purpose at least twice a year, because that first 5 to 6 minutes of just listening to Mala and Lumpy and Itchy talking to each other, it's a little hard to get through. It's grunts and groans and args and oogs. But I fast forwarded until they start doing stuff.
Yeah.
And this was tucked right in there. And this was the first time on screen that we got to see this guy. We got to see this bounty hunter, this guy named Boba Fett, who's become a huge part of our worlds, our collective worlds and collectors' worlds since then.
Correct. And one of the things that I really pulled out from it was a lot of the visuals that were there, not just the cartoon, but the whole holiday special. And sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit, but like, they really introduced like what a Wookiee dwelling was, how it looked in the big Sherwook trees, you know, on Kashyyyk, and like stuff like Boba Fett, like that stuff wasn't developed at that time. Like, we go back and look at it now and it's like, oh yeah, of course he looks like that. But at that time, there was no Boba Fett. There was no Mandalorians. There was nothing to hold on to. They actually built a lot in that show that has come out later, and that was actually interesting to watch.
Yeah, and some of those drawings that you're talking about for like the exterior piece, those were Ralph McQuarrie drawings.
Right.
So the guy who was behind the scenes that George Lucas worked with to come up with visuals that he could then go take, when they were putting together A New Hope, or as they called it way back then, Star Wars.
Right.
When they were taking it to the movie studio, saying that they want to make this thing and they wanted help doing it, they would use Ralph McQuarrie drawings. They would show them, Ralph McQuarrie's work, and this is going to be in there, and this is going to be in there. And some of Ralph McQuarrie's early drawings were used in that show as the scenes for Kashyyyk.
Right. Yeah, it was really cool seeing all that, knowing that this was like the first time that this was on TV, essentially. I mean, all of it. I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was just a wonder to watch.
And there are some pieces, not just in the animated clip that we saw, but in that whole show, that have shown up again and again and again. And I don't mean like Wookiees and Han Solo, because they had the stars in this. Right. Mark Hamill participated, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Peter Mayhew, even Anthony Daniels.
Right.
And I think Kenny Baker. Was in R2. I don't remember if he was or not, but I think he was. So you had the Star Wars folks in it, but there are things from that show that are still showing up. So for instance, there's a scene in the show where a stormtrooper goes into Chewbacca's son's bedroom and starts ripping it apart looking for stuff. And one of the things he tears apart is this giant stuffed bantha.
Yeah.
We just got done watching Skeleton Crew, which was a show about 4 lovable kids, and a couple times we saw into the kid's bedroom and saw the toy spaceships, and we got to see him playing with his action figures and reading a Star Wars tablet.
Right.
Just like some of the stuff that we saw in the holiday special.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of stuff from Skeleton Crew that was definitely ported right from the stuff we've seen in the holiday special.
Well, even so, there was one scene in the holiday special where they were looking at a holographic Cirque du Soleil, a circus act.
Right.
They recreate. They didn't use the footage from the holiday special, but they recreated that scene in Skeleton Crew. So when they did the little holographic circus performers on the Jajaric table, they recreated that, and Neil's family was watching it.
Right. That's right.
And then if we go to the story of the Faithful Wookie and Boba Fett, in that show we've already talked about it a little bit, how when we first see Boba Fett, our heroes think he's on their side. They think he's there to help them, when in reality he's a little sketchy. He's actually working with Darth Vader, and just like that in the Skeleton Crew, you've got these kids relying on or trusting this adult figure who ends up betraying them. I apologize. We should have probably, put spoiler warning in here somewhere. But if you haven't, watched the 1978 holiday special at this point, then I apologize for spoiling it for you.
Right. Yeah, you've had time.
you've had a little bit of you've had a little bit of time to catch up on this. And now, when you watched the holiday special on YouTube, did you watch the one that had the commercials put into it, or did you watch just commercial-free version?
They had the lead-ins to the commercials and the lead-outs, but they didn't have the actual commercials.
Okay, because there are some versions of it where you can see all, like, legit the whole thing.
I was kind of disappointed, because I'm like, I want to know what was in there, like what they were trying to sell at that time.
Well,
I mean, it wasn't cell phones, and it wasn't, some kind of, allergy pills. So I don't even know what the commercials for were back then.
Well, there may have been commercials for either Tylenol or Bayer aspirin. And I do remember seeing a version of it that had some car commercials in there, and one of them actually had I don't know if the Teamsters, but maybe the Automotive Workers Union singing. So
Oh, really?
yeah. So people complain about this variety show and music videos from Starship, but there was a commercial with auto workers singing. So I don't really know what they're all upset about.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about the 1978 holiday special, there's actually a book and a documentary called "The Disturbance in the Force: How and Why the Star Wars Holiday Special Happened." It was put together by Steve Kozak, if I'm pronouncing his name right, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I think it takes that show that was made all those many years ago that some people love and some people loathe, and helps you get a different perspective on it.
Yeah. I think that would be interesting. I'd have to check that out.
And so, considering that this was the first appearance of the bounty hunter Boba Fett, what jumped out at you either as super cool, very weird, or most interesting?
So let's see. Let's do this in order. I think the him showing up and trying to be that friend was kind of the cool part, because especially like Empire Strikes Back, he only had a couple lines and he was very mysterious.
Yeah,
So to have him come out and be like, "Hey friend, how you doing? I'll help you." That was the cool part, to actually see like some interesting dialogue from him. The weird part was the dinosaur.
yes.
And it wasn't like a dinosaur.
And
It
so, keep
was
talking because I want to see if I can get the image of the dinosaur up on the screen for us to talk about.
this was a pink brachiosaurus kind of looking thing. Okay, there it's a little more purple, but pinkish purple with humps on its back. Yeah, that's a weird thing that I don't think has ever come back in Star Wars. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I should be upset about that.
But yeah, that, like you said, that was what we first saw him on. We didn't get to see him zipping around the galaxy in Slave One. The first thing we saw him on was that wacky looking dinosaur.
Right. And they were in the middle of they said it was a water planet, but again, the water was like a weird pink color.
It was more like Jello
And
because the ship.
yeah, the
it-
ship kind of went in and it kind of like slowly closed around it, which was not how water works in most worlds. And of course, then these dinosaurs just kind of swam on top of it. And Luke landed on top of it and didn't sink in. I don't know.
and he landed on top of it, flying a Y-wing.
Yeah, that was cool, because Luke's always known for being in the X-Wing, and probably not anybody at that time knew that Y-Wings were two-seaters. I don't think they showed that in the original Star Wars.
And the nose piece separated
Ejected.
Yeah.
Now, see, the weird thing is, I didn't have a Y-Wing, but my cousin had a Y-Wing that actually separated.
Oh, okay.
And I never knew that I knew that his toy did it, but I never knew why that it separated. But finding that out through this thing, I'm like, it's got of course it's got it. I knew that already. I was just befuddled. I'm like, I can't believe that this was actually a thing. This is where it came from. So I enjoyed that very much. That was an interesting part of the Y-Wing. I didn't know that they separated with an ejection pod, because the X-Wings don't do that. You pretty much go down with the ship on those.
Yeah, so and like you said, the colors of the cartoon were psychedelic or super bright and saturated, oversaturated, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was early on, so they were still figuring out the noises, the beeps and the boops and the buzzes and the laser blasts and stuff like
Right.
that.
I mean, you can even see like if you look at our picture behind us, the helmet is actually pink around it.
Yeah,
So like they tried to oversaturate the miniature separately, or the character separate. That's how they separated it from the design in the old comics.
Yep.
Or the old cartoons. Either they had that solid black line that's separated it from the background, or when they wanted to do something softer, they used this pink coloring. Sometimes it was other colors, but that was there, and it's like that hasn't been in cartoons in years, like 30, maybe 40 years. And it was kind of interesting to see that brought back, and I'm like, I didn't remember that they did that until I saw it here, and I'm like, oh, that's the way they all are.
And then they got the wildly weird Ambin rifle that made its appearance in Mando season
Right.
1.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's that was an incredible Easter egg from, when they brought out Mando, that he had this gun. So
Yeah, and I think when they were filming Mando season 1, or maybe, yeah, I think there was either an Instagram picture or a Facebook picture on X or whatever. Jon Favreau posted a picture of the fully realized prop,
mhm.
that Ambin rifle for the first time, inspired by the one that was in the holiday special.
No.
Yeah, so it's wild to think that this thing from way back in 1978 could have such an influence on stuff today. And I know when we got together last time, our entire last episode was about Jango Fett, and we even went so far as to get into some of the details of costuming, because one of the things that you and I both know about Star Wars is folks like to make the stuff, whether they're building a mouse droid that can zip around a convention floor, or they're building a costume that they can wear. Folks really like doing that. And as weird as this sounds, there are no costume requirements that I've been able to find either in the 501st or the Mando Mercs related to this version of Boba Fett's costume. So there
Right.
aren't any formal requirements for it. But I think that we can look at some of these pictures to get a sense of some of the things that you would need to think about if you were going to build a costume like this.
Okay. And I want to start with, like I said in the beginning, some of these cells are a little different. Some of these pictures, the colorings are not the same. So what if I was going to be building this kit for me to wear? Of course, I would just start with a modern era CRLs as a guideline. So that would be your current Boba Fett, stuff like that.
And it's interesting that you say that, because when we look at the toys, so they made some toys. In fact, after we do the costuming stuff, I'll show you the toy because I actually have it up on the shelf behind me. You can see that modern era chest plate.
Right. Oh yeah, it's right there.
You
Oh,
know,
see, and one thing that I was going to point out is in the original cartoon, he did not have the diamond in his chest.
no, he didn't. It was, in fact, this is what it looked like. It was, and all the plates were touching.
Correct. All the plates
You
were
know,
touching,
well,
almost like it was one piece.
yes. And then when you look at the toy, that's where you get to see some of those different details, where you're talking about the modern. So you've got one chess piece, another chess piece, and the iron heart in the center, and then the ab plate below it, just like Boba Fett and Jango Fett that we were talking about last week.
Right. Now, of course, like I said, if I was going to make this for me, obviously the flight suit's white. In every coloration that I could find, that flight suit's white. Not pale white, not off-white, it's white. I mean, I don't know how he keeps that thing clean, but it's white.
Especially in dirty starships.
Right, or in that goo planet. So, next thing, the helmets, the boots, and the gauntlets are all the same color. And in that picture, the cod pieces too. Or no, I'm sorry, that's different color.
Yeah, the
So
cod
the
piece matches the shoulder bells and the
right,
collar.
the boots, the gauntlets, and the helmet are all like a bright silver color, almost like yours, And then the collar, the shoulders, and of course, we just pointed out the cod piece, and even like the belt, I guess. They're all like a steel color or like a dark gray.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I would probably make it more metallic looking because I think that would be more realistic. But you could really do just like a darker gray color and be okay with it. And of course, as I mentioned before, the chest plates, there's only 3 pieces. You have the 2 chest pieces with the fangs, and then the abdomen plate. There's no diamond, as you see there.
And it's interesting that they've got the little cutout here, even in the 1978 version of it. The little cutout that would have had that could have potentially had the digital readout on the left upper part of the chest piece.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It is there.
And we don't want to forget his little trophies here either.
He did have the trophies. Now, the interesting part is, and I don't know if you can see it, see if we can thumb through some of these pictures, but those armors are either yellow, they're tan in some of the pictures, and some of them, they're actually like an army green.
Yeah.
So, and I actually went through because I'm like, that looks like army green. It shouts to me army green.
Like
and I looked
the knee one.
Yeah, but in some of the cells in the actual cartoon, they're even greener than that. And I actually looked up the code, and I probably should have made a visual for this. But it's number 8F9779 would be the green that I would use.
Okay.
So, and of course, those should also match the knees.
So the chest and the knees are the same colors.
The chest and the knees are the same colors. So then you got 2 pouches, one on each. Well, actually, now that I see, but the one that I was going off of had 2 pouches on the left side, but the toy had one on each side.
Yeah, depending on the toy. So this body, from what I can remember, this looks like the Boba Fett body.
Yeah, it does. It looks a lot like the Boba Fett body.
Because if we look at this particular image here, he has a holster on one side. He doesn't even wear a belt.
Right.
He just has the cod piece. And then his knees don't have darts. They're just knees.
Nope, they're just knee pads.
He has the spikes on the boots. So the spikes on the boots have been a thing since way back in 78.
Yep.
And then he has the version of the jetpack with the rocket and the jump jets.
Right.
Not like the arena one that Django wore when he was on Geonosis.
Right, right.
And so this toy,
this one doesn't have it either. Interesting. It's interesting to see how different they are.
Yeah. And so this is the Gentle Giant version of it. And so this is a little bit closer to the cartoon. You know, to your point, the chest piece and the knees look more green than yellow. Even in the image behind it, they look yellow.
Where they're green here, yeah.
Yep. And then if we go to the Black Series action figure, so the 6-inch action figure, this looks more yellow, and even the cape looks different. And the Wookiee braids are also different.
They're brown on that one instead of, or maybe like an orange, like a sienna color, as opposed to the red that they are in some of the pictures.
And he does have, like you were pointing out, those two pouches hanging from the belt, and he also has these 2 big bulgy pockets that Boba Fett had as well. And this is the costume nerd in me. After looking at CRLs for as long as I have, he even has a girth belt under his utility belt, just like we have to wear in the Mando Mercs for a modern era character.
I think this is based more off the newer version of Boba Fett, the Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and
don't shoot me because I know there's differences between the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but I'm just the OG Boba Fett, not the holiday special one.
And in this version that I have, so this toy, I don't know if you can see it well, but the chest pieces and the knee pads on the toy that I have in front of me, they're more brown than they are green or yellow.
Yeah. Yeah. The other color that I saw was like a tannish color. So, and
Yeah.
I couldn't quite pick out how, browns are hard. So,
Yeah, and even the jetpack itself is browner. And it's,
yeah.
to your point, it's like a tan khaki on the chest piece, but the pouches are more of a brown, like a dirt brown.
Right.
You
Right.
know, this is just an example of one of the several things that I have in my Star Wars collection that are related to Boba Fett.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because the one that the cell that I was looking on when I was trying to pick out the different colors, he actually had 2 pouches on the left side and none on the right. But
Yeah.
in those, he's got a holster on the right side
Yep.
and nothing on the left side.
And if we to go back to some of
Interesting.
the other source material, I'm trying to see. I'm breaking out the Boba Fett book from John Celestri. Trying to see if I have any torso images of him. Communications guy, C-3PO. Yeah, I don't see any full body pictures. Although, if you, I do have a full body picture. But just so you're aware, this guy is called a sea dragon.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And so here's
So they do exist.
They do exist. And so when we look at John Celestri's drawings of Boba Fett, he doesn't have any pouches.
He has no pouches. Okay.
No
So I
pouches
guess
on the belts, and even no pouches on the pants.
you could do pouches wherever you like then.
Yeah.
Or no pouches. That's fine.
What you do is you build the pouches separate. You put Velcro on them or magnets, and you can take them on and put them on. Put them on and take them off as you need them.
You move them one on each side, 2 on one side.
Depends on
put
what
them on the
logo
back.
Yeah.
Put them on your shoulders. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and of course, the last thing, of course, would be the rifle. He's got the rifle, and we talked about that before, which they kind of bumped up to Din Djarin's.
Yep. Well, the rifle and the pistol. He has a single pistol.
Right. He does have a pistol, and not the EE3 carbine.
Yeah, it's just a very basic blaster. See if I can get another picture of that in here. I don't have it in this one, but it might be in his rough sketchbook.
Yeah, I don't have anything on me to show it, but
yeah, his pictures that are his concept drawings and his introductory drawings or whatever don't show him with the pistol in here.
Okay.
But yeah, so to me, it's incredible to think that this came out in 1978, and here we are in 2025. A, still appreciating it, and B, still wanting to make it, recreate it, or in my case, wanting to gather it, wanting to collect it.
Right. I
mean, so do you have any Boba Fett items in your collection?
I have a couple. I mean, I have let me see if I can grab it here. Oh, just too far away. I, of course, I made these with my boys. They're the perler beads.
And were you iron them together? You fuse them?
Yep, you iron them together. So I've got that. Of course, I played Star Wars Legions, so I actually made my own.
And you painted them?
I painted them, yep. So I got him. I do have a 3D printed one that I showed you earlier that I have yet to paint. I actually, and if you give me just a moment, I'll get it. I'm a big Warhammer fan, so when I got a big model, I actually did it in the theme of Boba Fett. So give me 1 second, I'll grab that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll talk to everybody else a little bit about this. And so, so Todd, as you can tell, Todd and I are both, collectors of Star Wars things. So I've got a little, Black Series Boba Fett helmet behind me here on the shelf. I've got a 12-inch action figure, and I somewhere along the line managed to get I think this is pewter. I don't know if it is or not. It's a soft metal Boba Fett keychain, and I can't tell or haven't been able to find anywhere on it the year, but I think now that I'm talking out loud, I think I just found it. And I'm going to do it the old, pop way of taking a picture and zooming in on it. So this particular thing was made in China in 1997, so it's not as old as I thought it was. But I probably picked this up at a vintage store or a flea market somewhere.
Very nice.
So let's check out your Warhammer fellow.
So I made, and this is one of the bigger ones. So, but I had to do it in Boba Fett themed. So he has a gun for each arm. He's got missiles on his back. He's even got the yellow knees, and I put the Mandalorian flag below his legs there. He's even got, I did chains instead of braids to make it more Warhammer-esque.
Okay.
But the yellow shoulders, it's all that nice green color.
And because it has more than 3 colors on it, it's table ready.
Oh, this one's done. It's actually quite beautiful. I don't know if I'm giving it any credit here, but and of course he's got all kinds of hidden weapons. He's got a weapon here, and
is that a T-visor on his helmet in the front?
He has a T-visor on the helmet in the front. Let's see if I can get better lighting.
That is remarkable. And that's hand painted. Like you painted that whole darn thing.
I painted it, yeah. The only thing that I didn't do is I made a vinyl for here with the circle with the F, and it messed up too many times, and so I kind of aborted on it for a little while. But one of these days I'm going to go back and cut a new vinyl for it. And,
oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah. He's a bigger model, but I definitely he's my Boba Fett knight, and I only have one of those, so he is essentially my biggest Warhammer model.
How heavy is that? It's like 2 or 3 pounds?
It's all plastic, so it's...
Oh, okay. It just looks really chunky.
Yeah, it's, one hand, no problem.
Okay.
So, even did his gauntlets are all red, just like Boba Fett. Yeah. He's my fave. And surprisingly enough, he has not been played on the tabletop yet.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
They're kind of a army on themselves now, so, and I only have one of them, so
okay,
I can kind of lean them into different armies, but I just haven't had an opportunity to really mess around with them.
Oh, that's too funny. And for me, I think that's a fantastic example of taking inspiration from this galaxy that was started by George Lucas, and all this many years later, taking the ideas for it, even if it's just as simple as colors, and attaching it to this other thing. So you were inspired by this maker, who was inspired by that maker, who got direction from the maker, and now you've got a Warhammer, a Boba Fett themed Warhammer guy.
Yep. And I already said, if I get another one, it's going to be Django. And then if I get a third one, it's going to be me.
That's so cool.
Or maybe Din Djarin. I don't know. We'll see.
So considering where we are, how do you want to wrap up tonight's show?
So as we finish out today, the important part is that we did meet our friend and the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy. From that day, unbeknownst to most of us, an icon was born. Most of us would not know it until a few years later when The Empire Strikes came out. Some of us, of course, had to wait a few years after that till we were old enough to understand it. But like many things, this was the beginning of the fandom. This was the origin that would inspire an entire community of costumers to learn to sew, to shape Sintra, to 3D print leather work, and spend many, many, many hours sanding stuff so that it looked great. So to create an armor so that we could play dress up and emulate a cartoon character from 1978. And I think what we're going to continue Boba Fett's journey in some future episodes. What do you think?
Oh goodness, yeah, because this was just the start of it. You know, he's shown up in novels, he's shown up in comics books, he's shown up in other shows. I mean, there was an entire live action show dedicated to this one guy who got his start in 1978. His at least his television start in 1978 in that 11-minute cartoon, The Story of the Faithful Wookie. So there's a lot more Boba Fett to come. Yeah. That is for sure.
And I think we're going to do some in eras, and I think that'll make some interesting, because though we handled Jango Fett in a single episode, I think we need more time for Boba.
Yeah. We could even break it up in terms of, you know, Boba Fett, the early years, you know, right, when he was on Camino with his or his papa, and then, you know, ended up joining Aura Singh and Bosk as a bounty hunter, and then do the later, the middle-aged Boba,
right,
that we've seen in either Empire Strikes Back or the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I got to say, thank you for coming on with me tonight and helping to record this episode for Star Wars Podcast Day. And I just want to bring up this image one more time so that our friends out there know what I'm talking about. So bear with me while I get it up there. So bounty hunting across the galaxy is representing or being represented in Star Wars Podcast Day, the Rambling Star Wars Fan, and a whole bunch of other shows. I'm not going to encourage you to watch any one specific show or listen to any one specific show, but I am going to encourage all of you to listen to some of those shows. They put a lot of time, effort, and energy into their episodes, and they're sharing them with all of us on Star Wars Podcast Day. So from my heart to your ears, thank you for joining us on Star Wars Podcast Day.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for Star Wars Podcast Day, and we hope you join us every month for a new episode of Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken.
And so this is Ken.
And this is Todd.
And this is the way.
This is the way.